the 1960s, there's just this idea of, well, let's hold a council. And is there some idea out there that needs to be dealt with? Is some, oh no, this will just be a pastoral council.
You're watching the Spotlight Network, starring Hollywood's newsman,
And if you're just
Logan
to
Crawford.
investigators, they now believe a single member.
He works with TV and film legends. And now, Logan's shining the spotlight on the world's top emerging authors and creators.
International were abducted.
This is Spotlight with Logan Crawford, streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV.
I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're exploring a thought-provoking religious book that tackles one of the most debated subjects in Catholicism today: tradition, Vatican II, and the future of the Roman Catholic Church. We're speaking to a terrific author. His name is Griff, and he takes readers deep into questions of faith, orthodoxy, and Christian identity. In his powerful book, it is called The Resurrection of the Roman Catholic Church, a guide to the traditional Catholic community. This is a compelling book and a compelling conversation today for anyone interested in Catholic history, traditional faith, and the search for authentic Christianity in the modern world. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Griff, thank you so much for joining us here today.
And thank you.
Let's start out by talking a little bit about Vatican Council II. Why do you believe it marks such a major turning point in the life of the Church?
Well, I think that is something that anyone and everyone should be able to see. The Catholic Church held 20 councils from the original one of Nicaea, worldwide ecumenical councils, I should say, from the original one of those of Nicaea back in 325, clear up through the First Vatican Council. That was basically 1869 going into 1870. And those councils, every one of them was to resolve a question, a problem in the church that needed all the bishops together, with their pope to discuss and come down to some conclusion of what is the position of the church about this. And then the earliest one, the question came about, what is Jesus Christ? Is he God? Is he some lesser being created by God in some, other manner, as was a prominent idea going around back at that time, and has variously, limped along in the background, as the Arian heresy. There was all sorts of other questions that came up. They had to decide other important questions of the church, and sometimes some of the later councils, like in the 13, 14, 1500s, kind of drilled more into more practical matters and things like, episcopal investiture and things like that. They got kind of subtle and complex and were often more focused on disciplinary aspects. But you come up to the Council of Trent, and now we're having to nail down the fact that there were a lot of crazy ideas going around that had to be said, no, this is what we believe, these other things we do not. And that was a very famous and prominent council that really nailed an awful lot down. And then they still had another council, like I said, in 1869, 70, which most importantly codified that what we call the infallibility of the Pope. You have an actual Catholic Pope. He is infallible under specific conditions. If he's teaching on faith or morals, and he's attempting to teach the whole church and impose something, as something to believe by all Catholics, that nails it down. And once that has happened, there's no going back and saying, well, oops, I made a mistake. We're trusting God to ensure that the Pope will always be correct when operating within this very specific and narrow sphere of authority. So all these councils were resolving questions. Now all of a sudden in the 1960s, there's just this idea of, well, let's hold a council. And is there some idea out there that needs to be dealt with is oh no, this will just be a pastoral council, which should really mean we're going to talk disciplinary and administrative matters only.
Mm.
That's what people expected going in. Uh, let's just say some of the things did affect a number of doctrines. And once the outworking of that began to show itself, especially afterwards, but even to some degree during that time, everything started changing. Your mother describes that, pretty well. All of a sudden, everything started changing. And it isn't just the language, it's the whole manner and way it is done. You walk into what passes for a Catholic church, so-called, look, that's what it says on the sign in the front. I'll say Saint Miscellaneous is because, in the old days, it kind of mattered, what saint somebody, honored, by their parish. This was, St. Mark's Cathedral or something. You could say, oh, yeah, St. Mark from the Bible. And, he might be a saint of particular devotion there, for example. But now it's all just Saint Miscellaneous. It could be any name, no name, you wouldn't know. But at any rate, you go in your local Saint Miscellaneouses today, and it's a party, it's a song, it's a dance. It might even be fun. You might like, but face it, there's people who go there not really so much about getting close to God, but to see and be seen by the other people there. Billy Graham used to tell the story of his wife saying, his wife would say, why it's hard to get a man to go to church? Because he's not interested in what the other men are wearing. So you kind of get that sort of idea that, yeah, you got to be seen in there, and you got to be, dressed a certain way, or it's going to be all this kind of stuff. And it ends up being more about that, or a social club, or maybe there might be particular programs for young kids, for singles looking to get married, for older people in various conditions of life, and so on. And you're going for practical stuff that, quite frankly, probably about almost any church on the face of the earth could help you with.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, you walk in there, there's noise, there's conversation, like I said, song, sometimes even dance, and so forth. And it's like a party. It might entertain you, it might not. As you walk out of there, and there's something empty. And that empty thing is, you wanted to come before, and your mother will remember this very well. Yeah. And I don't know if she's alive. If she is, you could ask her.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
That's okay.
But those things happen. But you just have to go from what you remember of her.
Yeah.
But she was there when she walked into a Catholic church, and it could have been any Catholic church on the face of the earth. You say everything was silence. It was quiet. It was respect. It was awe. Even much of what the priest did when he's in there was quiet, was peaceful, was, he whispers a lot of other things. You may not even know what he's saying because he's not talking to us out here. Right. He's talking to God and so forth. And he's facing the other way. And I kind of see it a little bit like, the bus driver. He's not facing the people he's giving a ride to and talking to them. He's looking at the road in front.
Exactly.
For obvious reasons. And, we may vaguely see his arms move when he does things, but on the whole, most of what he does, we're not really going to see. We just care that he does it right.
Right.
And so the priest up at the altar is doing all of this kinds of, the whole ceremony of the Mass, really.
Yeah.
And in that ceremony, the Catholic Church holds that the actual body and blood and soul and divinity of Christ actually come to exist right there at the altar as he goes through a certain point in the Mass, and after which we are given that actual body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ, his blood. Unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you do not, you have no part in me. That was one of our Lord Jesus Christ's hard words. Well, that's a whole different atmosphere. The content of the prayers differs. It's subtle in some places, but kind of marked in others. There's a lot of prayers that are changed. We would implore the merits of the saints, for example.
Yeah.
Be the prayers of Saint Gertrude, guide us into the ways of what we need to do, or something. I don't know, something more specific than that, but I'm not thinking of it all. Where now it's more like, may we have a good day kind of stuff.
Mhm.
There's very serious watering down.
Yeah. It used to
Well,
be a place of reverence. It used to be a place of worship, and now it's devolved into a community center. And I
it's a
think
social
that's the
club.
problem,
Nothing
right?
wrong with social clubs, but that's not what church was supposed to be
Right,
about. There's a place for social clubs, that's fine, but
right.
church is something else, something
Yeah,
most people don't even get and never even see because they don't realize that, they didn't just do the same thing, in English or whatever vernacular is instead of Latin. There
mhm,
really is a change in the whole atmosphere, the way it's done, and even the content of the prayer. So
yeah,
when you change everything like that, you want to know something? In all the history of the church, there'd never been any such drastic change. It might be a
right,
tiny thing. You might add another feast on the calendar because some saint has finally
right.
been canonized by the church. Usually, decades, often centuries after the saint had lived and died and
Hmm.
had this holy life that was known at the time and respected. But at some point, the church may come to say, "Well, now we are officially canonizing Saint." You know, well, that's a
Bernadette,
vivid
let's
example.
say, whatever
Yeah,
it might be.
but
Let me
yeah,
just ask
someone
you
who said,
this. Let's
I don't know
get
why
to
the
your
name's
book
on
for
some,
a little
yeah,
bit. What do you
yeah,
hope your book does? Do you hope it makes some changes within the traditional Roman Catholic Church, or are you
yeah.
calling
Well,
for
the
more
only
of
changes
a
needed
separate
is this.
community?
Oh no, well, we really become de facto a separate community,
Right,
but it isn't we that left them. They left us by
right.
going to all this new stuff. And actually, by the time you drill into all of this, all of what I have to say here, you realize there was a reason for these changes, and it's not the goofball reasons they give. Oh, we got to get in step with the times. The church never bothered about being in step with the times. The
Right.
world changes. It has always been changing. There were soft times, hard times, rich times, poor times, all sorts of different times. And the church was always there like a constant, like this mountain that's just always there. And you could look at that and you could say, okay, this is the eastern face of the mountain. So I must be to the east of the mountain or the southeast or whatever, because it's the same. And
Mhm.
wherever you are, you can look at that and get a pretty good index of where you are.
Right.
Now it's like somebody just blew up the whole thing and it doesn't exist anymore and you don't know where you are. So
Yeah.
even if you liked it or even didn't like it, it was always the same.
I'm
Semper
seeing,
idem.
I'm seeing, like, I spent a lot of time down south. And down south in the US, I see more and more traditional Catholic Church uh, masses and churches. Have you been seeing that as well, where you can listen to the mass in Latin and so forth?
I don't see that so much as a phenomenon of being in the South versus other parts. The Latin Mass, real Latin Masses, are spread very thinly, but all around the world. When I
Mhm.
was preparing my book, I had correspondences with people from many different parts, the Russian Federation, Arabia, Norway, and different
Mhm.
parts of the world, because we're not just here in one spot. Catholic, one key aspect of being Catholic, one holy Catholic and apostolic is that
Right.
we're all around the world. And
Yeah.
we are, and we exist in places I'm not even aware of as far as, I mean, I don't know what's happening Catholic in Nepal,
Right.
but probably there's somebody. I should not be surprised that somebody there. It might be a very small community. It
Hey,
might just
Griff,
be
we're
a
down
couple of
to like our
families that
last
get
1 minute. Let me ask you this. After someone's done reading your book, what do you hope sticks with them? What do you hope changes?
First of all, the most important change that any of us can make is in our own lives.
Hmm.
So, for starters, we should try to find a traditional Latin Mass. And if we could even just see one, that would certainly give us a whole different perspective on a lot of things in our lives. But more important, if it can be reasonably attended on a regular basis, that's what I really most recommend we do, is we find such a Mass, we attend it, we enroll our family in it. We go there. That's our parish. That's who we'll go to when it's time for our children to be baptized or to be married or, all these kinds of things. That's where to go,
Hmm.
as well as, as many regular Sundays. If it's reasonably near, just go there. That's great. Many
Yeah.
of us travel hours each way just to get to a Mass. And obviously, in that case. A lot of us can't go there every Sunday, but we go what we can.
Yeah.
And and then there's prayers we can say at home when we don't go.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, you've inspired me, sir. I'm going to start going to some traditional Latin masses just to get a feel for it. Like I said, I was very young when they used to do it, and then they changed it in my childhood. And I know, like I mentioned to you before the start of the show, my mom always resisted the changes. So I'm going to go take a look based on your recommendation. This book is terrific, folks. It explains the whole situation and the connection you'll get with Christ again through traditional Roman Catholic practices. The Resurrection of the Roman Catholic Church, a guide to the traditional Catholic community. It is a compelling read for anyone interested in Catholic history, traditional faith, and the search for authentic Christianity in the modern world. Griff, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Okay, so, well, what's the next question? There's a lot to say here.
We are all out of time, sir, unfortunately, but I
Oh, boy.
appreciate your insight that you've shared with us.
Okay, well, and I guess we'll just have to make do with that.
Yep.
All right.
Well, and also they can pick up your book and read a whole lot
Well,
more
that's
because
true.
there's a
There's
lot to be
everything in
unpacked
the
there.
book. And there's a couple other books that come after it. They're really like theological footnotes to the book.
Wonderful.
So that, but at any rate, that's the main book, and that's where it starts. And it'll introduce anybody to that whole cultural milieu that most people know little to nothing of, or maybe you've heard of it, but you haven't been there. Until you've been there, it won't come back to you.
Well, you're
You
putting
know how to
forth
find a Catholic now.
You're putting
Right.
forth an inspiring message, and I appreciate it. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time.